And so my question here is, if you believe in this kind of power structures that have existed and continues to exist, how do you go about, or how might you go about reconciling these structures?
Thank you. Right, I mean, we had slavery for 160 years. There was a civil war fought over it. Some people learned that later in life than others.
Campaigning in New Hampshire Wednesday, Nikki Haley stumbled into a controversy when she was asked about the cause of the Civil War.
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do.
The questioner followed up, expressing surprise that she didn't mention slavery.
What do you want me to say about slavery? Next question.
Psychologist. So, yeah, I probably struggle with psychology.
So I want to address the first question. I think it's great. I think we, as I said in the beginning, we don't have these kinds of open conversations anymore in this country. And so the heart of the question, let me summarize it as, reverse racism is racism. You agree with me on one hand, but on the other hand, how does that account for historical injustices in this country, including power structures that may be based on inequalities grounded in race? I think that what you would think of as racism in this country, or you could fill in the blank, sexism, or any other ism or form of discrimination, it gets to be small enough, not to be zero, but small enough that the best thing we can do is let it atrophy to irrelevance. Today, the best way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. If we drive with our eyes in the rearview mirror, we're just going to keep crashing the same car and recreating the very thing we wanted it to eradicate.
Huh. I never thought about it like that. This man may have just changed my mind on affirmative action.
Oh yeah, Didi got a podcast.
Man, welcome back to another episode of the Ruling Class Podcast, or Didi Got a Podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Didi, back up in this bitch with another video. Listen, we ask that you please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time we post a new video. I would really, really appreciate it. Listen, I want to get straight into the topic. Vivek Ramaswamy, presidential candidate for 2024. Vivek Ramaswamy is the best I've ever seen. He's the best I've ever seen. Imagine living a life where you're taught to be a victim, to have a victim mentality. And on top of that, a big part of having a victim mentality is backed with facts, backed by truths. So in other words, there are things that have actually happened historically that no one can refute happened that justifies the victim mentality. The problem is, one can be true without the other. So in other words, the history can be the history without you having a victim mentality, right? And when you hear someone speak against something that you stand for and something you've always been taught to stand for and believe in, you immediately go to that mentality of thinking that person is racist, or thinking that person just do not understand the plight and the historical context and the fight of so-called black and brown people in this country. Vivek Ramaswamy has been on his campaign run, and he just recently answered a question from a black pastor, and I've never heard anyone articulate an answer to, the question about systemic racism, et cetera, so well before in my life, right? His answer was filled with so much substantive information and empathy at the same time, while also recognizing the very things that I feel like people try to avoid talking about, that my mind was blown, right? Because I used to think there's no way someone can answer this question without sounding tone deaf, without sounding racist, without sounding very dismissive of the historical context, the historical discrimination, the historical racism, slavery, things of this sort that, contribute to why affirmative action even exists to begin with. Not after hearing this man. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's take a look at this.
And so my question to that is, I've always thought too that, although I agree with that, I've always thought too that prejudice and discrimination are inherently tied to historically rooted in entrenched institutionalized forms of systemic racism and, hierarchies, injustice, and power imbalance. And so my question here is, if you believe in this kind of power structures that have existed and continues to exist, how do you go about, or how might you go about reconciling these structures?
Thank you. And did you have a second question too?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second question is, I'm a pastor, and as a pastor, just as America needs saving, I think pastors also need saving, and part of that starts with fitness. I saw you on Instagram with Logan Paul.
Yeah.
You guys were doing push-ups.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
You did it for boxer.
Yeah.
So would you mind doing 10 push-ups for a pastor?
That's right. You got that. Right. You want to start with that? Let's start with that. Come here. Count them out, buddy. Let's go. Ready, go. Ready, 1, 2, 3.
1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
There you go. That's good. I didn't even get my workout today. That's good. I'm proud of you. That's good. Thank you, man. That's a favor to me. I like that. Did my wife call you beforehand and tell you we had to? She planted that one, didn't she? She said, I'm not exercising enough on the campaign trail. She's looking out for me. That's good, man. What's your name?
I'm Samuel Anson.
Samuel?
Yes.
Samuel? Okay, good to meet you. So I want to address the first question. I think it's great. I think we, as I said in the beginning, we don't have these kinds of open conversations anymore in this country. And so the heart of the question, let me summarize it, is reverse racism is racism. You agree with me on one hand, but on the other hand, how does that account for historical injustices in this country, including power structures that may be based on inequalities grounded in race? It's the heart of the question? Yeah, fair. Thank you. So here's my view on this. Have we been perfect through our national history? Absolutely not.
Let me go ahead and just pause real quick to say, this is typically how people start off, right? I've heard Candace Owens, I've heard many people over the years say a lot of what you're about to hear him say individually, but I've never heard someone collectively say all of it together and word it in a way so articulate, full of so much substantive information that it's just irrefutable, right? So again, I want you to just pay attention to Vivek Ramaswamy, how polite. He's not talking down anyone. He's talking to the pastor, right? He's not victimizing anyone. He's not even defending white people, racism. He's not doing any of that, right? And most importantly, notice how he did push-ups with the pastor before. That's connecting. That's bonding. That's bonding with Americans in a different way that I've never seen anyone do before. It's a big risk for me to get on my platform, more than a lot of you realize, for me to be able to say that Vivek Ramaswamy is the best I've ever seen. He's just as professional as Barack Obama, but he has more integrity than I believe Barack Obama has.
Right? I mean, we had slavery for 160 years. There was a civil war fought over it. Some people learned that later in life than others.
What do you want me to say about slavery? Next question.
But that's okay. But that's history, right? It's American history. And so the question is, what do we do about it now? So I'll give you my honest, sort of candid feelings about where we are. Was there a time and place for correcting for those past injustices? Yeah, I think it was like in 1870. And did we do a perfect job of it? No, we didn't. But at a certain point in time, I think that what you would think of as racism in this country, or you could fill in the blank, sexism, or any other ism or form of discrimination, it gets to be small enough, not to be zero, but small enough that the best thing we can do is let it atrophy to irrelevance. And if otherwise you try to attack it, it's like an immune system. My background's in biology. So sometimes I think in these kinds of analogies, but it's like an immune system trying to fight a virus. Long after the virus is gone, or almost gone even, it starts to just attack its own organs. That's what I see happening in the country. And so here's my view, to make that kind of abstract reflection a little simpler. Today, the best way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. That's what I believe. And I think that in the name of anti-racism, which is a movement that calls out for us to be more race conscious of the differences, to correct for them, I think we've actually created more racism in this country. And it's sad because, so I've started businesses, of multiple different businesses, this campaign. It turns out I've hired people of every combination you could probably not every combination, but most combinations you could imagine of race and gender and this or that or the other thing. In one case, it was a black woman who was in a senior position of authority. One of the well-compensated, high position of authority. A lot of people would be jealous of that position and want it. And I heard, right, somebody who's upset she's above the hierarchy. She just got her job because she's a black woman. She's checking a box. And that hurt me, not because I took it as an insult, because I don't hire people that way. But it hurts me to say that's unfair to her. It's not fair to anybody. It's not just to anybody. To stand for a system where we see each other as called upon to see each other on the basis of the color of our skin. And so at a certain point, the right answer is, I think, we have to move forward. If we drive with our eyes in the rearview mirror, we're just going to keep crashing the same car and recreating the very thing we wanted it to eradicate. So that's what I believe. And that's why I'm against, what you'll call, what does that refer to? Reverse racism, like affirmative action, right? Quota systems, direct or indirect. I'm against them because I think they're inherently divisive. They're anti-meritocratic. I think they're anti-American at their core. And so you will never, it's kind of like, in a philosophical sense, like the answer to the first question. We're never going to defeat the people who disagree with us by censoring them, by using the tools of the opposition against them. So I say that in the category of speech. Well, we Republicans have been censored, and we have. Conservative speech has been censored, so we're going to come back and censor you. We're never going to win that way because you lose the very thing we're fighting for. So it's the same thing. Well, we experience racism. Now we're going to get racism in reverse. We never win by using the toolkits of the other side. And you're on a higher pay grade than me as a pastor. I'm just running to be president, but you're operating on a different plane. But I think that it's something that you might think of as mercy.
Look, already, I think the best way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discrimination on the basis of race. Powerful. Simple but powerful. I believe that if we keep looking in the rearview mirror, we're going to continue to crash. Right? We cannot move forward by replicating the behaviors of the past that led to where we are to begin with. Even if we're doing it to the other side. That just hit me different. The mercy statement that he just made just hit me different. Now, the other side would say, and this is where I'm just a little bit conflicted, but I'm mostly here. This man has persuaded me otherwise. The other side would say, well, how do you justify all the people who've gotten ahead? I've used this analogy on this channel before because I've defended affirmative action many times on this channel. And what I've used before is I've said, it's like the analogy of Monopoly. The way it's viewed is not all white people, but many white people in this country have went around the Monopoly board 7 or 8 times. Or let's just be more realistic, 4 or 5 times, speaking of generations. And the one time that Black Americans get some sort of advantage and get a free trip around the board once, everybody's in an uproar. It makes no sense. It's unfair. But listening to him put all these things together, it hits different. It's not right. It's not right. You say, well, you're still not answering how you justify. I don't have all the answers. I don't have the perfect answer. But I tell you this, using reverse racism is not the right way to do it. I think the more appropriate thing to do is to get to the root cause of what's leading to so many Black and brown people not being equipped enough to be able to get into a lot of these schools as it pertains to white people, Asians, and others who are in better school districts, et cetera, which is the policies that a lot of, us black and brown people are growing up in these disenfranchised, disadvantaged environments, right? We need to address it before. It doesn't mean we go through whatever, don't get the proper education, then it's time to apply for college, and then we're enrolled into a college that we're not even prepared for, we're not even ready for, right? It's not the case all the time, but that's what happens, and it's not right, right? Punishing white people that didn't even exist during that time period, to then give a pass to black people who also did not exist during that time period, who are also, in some cases, many cases, some could argue, not even equipped and ready and prepared to be in some of these high-ranking positions or high-ranking school or just any school in that particular program. I'm not saying black people are not going to be prepared for any school. I'm just saying, like, it's not right, right? And I think this man has articulated it so well that I don't know how you respond to that as justifying and saying, well, we're going to continue to discriminate against other people to make up for the past. I don't think that's how we do it.
At a certain level, what is our path forward as a country? At some point is going to have to, at some point in time, I mean, there's a time for justice and there's a time for mercy. And those two things are in tension with one another, right? And I think at this moment we live in, I got a question yesterday. Somebody asked me a question. He said, what was the cause of the Civil War? And do you think that there's a civil war in this country right now? I think we are skating on thin ice as a country right now. I think we are in the middle of a cold cultural civil war right now. I don't want to see it turn hot, but I think it's going to require a combination of both justice, accountability for those who have committed those wrongs, with a blindfold of justice, but also some level of saying we will move on as a country. And so that's what I believe. And so hopefully that addresses your question for how I think about it. Not denying past inequity, but by acknowledging that at a certain point we're going to do about as well as we could, and then we decide the best thing for all of us is to aspire to our ideals. And this is what makes America beautiful. Are we a perfect nation? No, we are not. We never have been, and we never will be. Because here's why. I can tell you why it will never be the case. There's two things that are true about us. We're human beings, we're not gods. And we're still a nation that has ideals. See, it's interesting how nobody calls China hypocritical, or Iran, or Pakistan, or anywhere else. You don't hear the allegations of those nations being hypocritical. To be hypocritical, you had to have ideals in the first place. So as a nation that has ideals and a nation that's comprised of human beings, we will always fall short of those ideals. But we're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union. The pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all. That is what makes America great. That is what makes America itself.
And let me just say, while Indians are not exactly and have not exactly faced the same injustices that, black Americans have faced, both have faced them, but in different ways. Even though it's two different situations, it also helps that he's not a white person saying this, because I am one of those people that believe the truth is the truth. It doesn't matter who it comes from. But we do understand at the same time that representation matters for many people in this world, let alone this country. And if it's coming from a white person, some people just not even willing to listen or hear it. So being that he might not be black, let alone black American, but he's non-white. So for some people, it may come off as a little bit more digestible. For me, I don't care who it comes from. I just want to hear the truth. The man is saying nothing but the truth, right? I would love to hear how he plans or what's his approach to addressing the policies and the environments that many black and brown people grow up in, where they don't have access to the same resources, the same education, et cetera, et cetera. But everything he says is the truth, right? And I now feel completely different about affirmative action. Give me your thoughts, man. Hop in the comment section. What do you think? How do you feel about affirmative action? How do you feel about Vivek Ramaswamy's approach to this answer? I thought it was efficient. I thought it was sufficient. And I thought it was full of substantive, necessary information that the entire country needs to hear including black Americans. Hop in the comment section, give me your thoughts, man. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you. Peace.
Oh yeah, Diddy got a podcast.